frequency distribution tables typically only include two columns. That will be the class type and the frequency. However, sometimes they're going to also require you to include either the relative frequency or the cumulative frequency. In this case, we are going to also include both of those. So we'll have a 4-column frequency distribution table. In this particular example, we took a sample from previous ARC students who were taking my statistics course, and I recorded their ages. I want to be able to create this 4-column frequency distribution table with 8 classes. The most efficient way of creating this table is to put this data into our list feature. Notice I've put my data into list 2. You can hold your data into any list that you want. I'm going to put mine into list 2 because for whatever reason I want to put my list 1, I need to hold that data. So if that's the case, then you need to make sure that you write down what list your data is in for reference later. Next, I'm going to sort ascending my data list. Remember, you need to sort ascending the particular list your data is sitting. Since mine is in L2, I need to reference that. Once that's done, I can go back into my list. And now we can see my data is from least to greatest in L2. To create my classes, I need to find my class width. I'll need my maximum and my minimum value. Here my minimum value is 16, and using my arrows, I can find that my maximum value is 44. So when I find the difference between my lowest and my highest value in the data and divide by the number of classes, I get 3.5. Remember to include all of my data values in the 8 classes I want. I need to always round this value up. So my class width is going to be 4 years. Next, I'm going to start finding my lower boundaries. I must always start with the minimum value in my data set unless I've told otherwise. This means I'm going to start with 16 and add 4 until I've created all 8 classes. Next, I'll need to find my upper boundaries. Remember that you can have no overlap and no gaps. Notice now I have 8 class categories, and all of my lower boundaries differ by 4, as well as all of my upper boundaries differing by 4. There are no gaps and no overlaps. I can now go back into my list and count the number of responses that occur in each of those classes. So between the ages of 16 and 19, I can count 10 responses. Between 20 and 23, there are 19 responses. If I continue through my list, I can add up all of the responses that occur in each of my classes. And there were 48 total surveyed. The relative frequency is a decimal, which represents a percentage of what each class is in terms of the overall survey or percentage of the group. For example, the age class 16 through 19. 10 out of the total 48 responses of ages occurred in that group. As a decimal, this represents 0.2083 approximately. This is about 20.83% of the total surveyed amount. Each class is a fraction of the total, and that fraction represents the relative frequency in terms of the total. For the 20 through 23 age class category, they represent 19 out of the 48 total surveyed. That is approximately 0.3958 or 39.58% of the total number of students who took statistics in my class last semester. We can complete this by creating the fraction of each class frequency out of the total. If we were to add up all the relative frequencies, they should total up to be close to or exactly 1, depending on how we round. This would represent 100% of the total surveyed. Cumulative frequency means that we're going to start with the first number of classes. As we move from one class to the next, think about adding each group to the current group. So if I start with 10, when I move to the next class, think of it as that class joins my current class. So the 10 in the first group added to the 19 in the next group means I have now 29 total surveyed accounted for. As you move from one class to the next, you add the number of responses until you have accumulated the entire number in the survey. You'll notice the cumulative frequency that aligns with the last class, 44 through 47, is the same number as the total surveyed. A general note about relative frequencies is that usually this is given as a decimal. Be careful when you're reading directions on relative frequency, as sometimes that can be required to be given as a percent rounded to a certain place value. For example, notice on the side where I had given the value to 2 decimal places, 20.83%.